So I just started with a few portraits here, and unfortunately I couldn't find one of Carrie or Gillian, though they're somewhere there. I know I looked, I did. But I have like stacks and stacks. So this was for the Sub Pop 200 shoot.
Did you make that t-shirt?
Who made those?
Okay, I've got a story. There were only 2 of those shirts made. Okay, so Jonathan Ponham and myself wore those shirts when we went to visit our distributor, Caroline Records in New York. And we didn't say anything about money, but we left with a check.
The original bearded indie rocker.
This is actually probably the latest photo. This was like '92, the backstage of the Pearl Jam Drop in the Park show. Yeah.
Charles, can you guess how much that jacket cost me?
50 cents? $1?
You're in the zone.
American potato.
Now, I wanted the story about this shirt. I've been fascinated with it for years. Pigs are precious. Where did that come from?
It was related to a medical charity of some kind. So poor pigs were probably the subject of some horrible experiments. No longer got the shirt.
But I love the smile on your face combined with the cuddly pigs.
Was that Sub Pop 200
Classic.
shoot?
Always. This is also for the Sub Pop 200 shoot. Probably on the same. I think we did most of these on the same day. What's that?
No.
Yeah,
Someone handed me that hat and I put it on.
Like
John Goodmanson, who couldn't be here tonight, stopped eating pigs when he saw one eating a breath mint on the David Letterman show. And he said that he wasn't going to eat anything that's smarter than the musicians he records.
And here's Steve. This also was for the Sub Pop 200 photo shoot.
That's right, that's my trademark back then.
Yeah, it's out in Ellensburg. And I love this picture. So many reasons.
What are you standing in front of?
That's Dick Elliott's Dick and Jane spot right across from the police station down in Ellensburg, Washington. Dick Elliott, a noted collage artist, Central Washington University.
That's right, back here.
I'm afraid so.
It's like the lame list.
Covering all the bases. That's a band photo.
Yeah, this was an outtake from a photo shoot that we did at where I was living at the time, up there on 14th and John. It's actually the apartment's still there. They remodeled. It's got like classic columns and porticos out front. But when we were living there, I think we were paying like, I don't know, there was 3 of us, and we were each paying $100 a month or something. And there were literally mushrooms growing in the ceiling in the living room. But it was a great place for people to come by and meet. And I could set up a white seamless sheet. I did the L7 photos there, a lot of stuff. This was, yeah, good for that. So this is the U-Men at the Oddfellows Hall in 1985, and this is one of my. This was what I was kind of aiming for as a style back then, and it was that sort of bringing the audience and band together, and I love playing with. I took a few photos like this. There's one of the Replacements with Jimmy May, and where the band and the audience, it's like they're splitting them. They're like so involved that they're actually going the opposite directions. It's like magnets or something, you know. And composition compositionally, it works really well.
Was this before or after they played at the Mural Amphitheater and set it on fire?
I think this is before, yeah.
This was the You Men Leave Home show, right?
What's that? It might have been a New Year's show. Yeah. Blackouts open for them, and yeah.
What,
No.
Blackouts open for them?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think it was like the Blackouts last
No,
show.
they're like huge.
Yeah, I'm with Kim on that.
I think you men would open for Blackouts.
No. Blackouts open.
No.
I was there, damn it. I was taking pictures. Here's our Rashomon moment already.
If the Blackouts opened, they
No,
opened
but
by
it's
choice.
1985.
If it was 85 and it was the
They were
Oddfellows Hall,
actually, yeah, the
this was
Blackouts.
Skinyard's first show. And we opened for the U-Men at Oddfellows Hall.
Okay.
The U-Men Leave Home.
All right.
U-Men, Baba Yaga, F-Holes, Function Disorder, Skinyard, and somebody else. And Slam Hate was the
Yeah,
MC.
that's why they call him the Godfather.
I just remember there was this thing with like Larry Reed, and there was like 20 people playing guitar, and Larry was jumping in the audience with a guitar and stuff. I don't know.
No,
So
Charles is
they
correct.
could-
It couldn't be a Rashomon
Yeah,
situation.
they could have played several shows at
I
the
think
Oddfellows
everyone's
in
memories
that
would
year.
be tested.
Anyway,
This is the
let's
problem.
move on.
If any of us does a memoir, this is going to be the
We
problem.
could go down a rabbit hole here. So this is the same show here, and again, turning around my lens on the audience, and this is very, very typical of what an audience was like at the time. And, Hank Trotter, when we were designing Touch Me I'm Sick, the images like this we called the stray dogs from every village. You know, because there's no unifying fashion or theme. It's not like a sea of Mohawks, or, you know, there's kind of mods and hippie punks, and, you know, this kid with the haircut on the right there, kind of going off at the stage, going, he held a stick of incense the entire show.
Did the U-Men, I had heard that they had to play under different names at times because they were banned from clubs. Like, we have one poster that's like Mig Motto and the Ubongo Sound Cheapists.
Yeah.
Is that, what was that all about?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Jack?
That was the U-Men's alter ego, under which they would do sort of more performance artish kind of things.
That's
You know, I dimly remember them wearing robes and playing bongos while Charlie did some sort of poetry thing. Charlie being their drummer, actually.
Bukowski.
Yeah, and that was the only Nick Motto and the Ubongo Sound Shapists show that I witnessed myself. It ended up with the audience throwing things at them, actually.
A lot of shows back then ended up with the audience throwing things.
Is that Talia with the sunglasses?
I think.
Steel pole bathtub?
Yeah, Darren. Talia.
Well, no, he did have a change, but it's not Talia, it's a different name.
Trying to see who we
Talia
know.
was the name when he was still male.
Okay, yeah, I just know him as Darren.
He was the drummer for Mr. M, and
Mr.
one
M.
of the founders of Steel Pole Bathtub.
Yeah. And actually, in the front there, oh my God, his name escapes me. Mike. He's a famous documentary filmemaker. He did
Mike
those.
Lucas.
Yeah.
Mike Lucas or Mike Tucker?
Mike Tucker.
Mike Tucker.
Yeah, he did the documentaries on Iraq, a couple of them, and this one about the attempted assassination of Blair and stuff. So yeah, he's a well-known documentary filmmaker.
So in '85, like where are people playing at that are playing original music?
Mostly in halls and
art galleries.
Art galleries.
Gorilla Gardens.
Yeah, Larry Reed had some clubs.
Raven Image.
Gorilla Gardens.
Raven Image, Ground Zero, and the, what was it, Gray? Was it called? Those-
Grey Door,
Gray Door, those three were all,
UCTL, the Meat Locker.
so the ones that begin with G were all like near each other in Pioneer Square International District area.
Hey Charles, so it's like, is that like a slow shutter speed and like the light is blurred?
Yeah, so typically back then this was with a old big Nikon with a 20mm lens, and the way I would do it often is I had like a Vivitar 285 flash, big kind of plastic standard flash at the time, and I would have a cable. So I would be holding, in this type of shot, I would be holding both the camera above me and a flash, so you can see how the light comes down in that sort of direction. And then I would have the shutter speed open for a second or however long to balance out whatever ambient lights were there. There weren't many at those shows. That technique is very difficult to do now with all this LED lighting and stuff. It was great when there was just a few spots. So,
Charles, did you ever get like jostled by the crowd?
oh yeah, and that was, that was part of it, and I would jostle back, so. Yeah, and the fact that half the time I wasn't really looking through the viewfinder, it didn't matter, so, yeah. And in fact, if the crowd was really jostling, it could be dangerous to look through the viewfinder because you get that thing smacked in your eye socket. Yeah. So again, this was Paul Soldier from 10 Minute Warning at the Metropolis, and the Metropolis was the clubhouse there for a couple of years. It was a year and a half, year? Okay. And again, this was the style I was aiming for, which was that sort of to make a live photo more interesting, to add another element to it. Yeah.
Can you all talk about the importance of the Metropolis as far as like the all ages scene and maybe about Hugo Piatno a little bit?
Yeah. Hugo ran the place, but our manager, long-term manager, Susan Silver, worked for Hugo during that period of time. And our founding bass player, Hero, he had a band called The Altered. They were kind of like the house band at Metropolis. Hugo had an opening up for everybody, including Violent Femmes, etc. I don't know how many shows I saw there, but it was a long period of time. Like, guys like Tales of Terror and Fang, Butthole Surfers play there. And that's where I met Alex from Green River. Where I first saw Mr. Ep with Steve playing guitar with Mark. So that was
Had a huge influence on the scene.
it's like 82, 83, Malfunction played there, Melvin.
Phil Mel played there.
Wasn't Hugo
With
also
Bobby Yaga.
a big fan of reggae? Like there was like a reggae show?
Muda Baruka.
Yeah, I remember seeing Muda Baruka there. Yeah, Hugo was great because he was like this kind of European influence in a way for a lot of us. He was very
He was French.
He was French. He was exotic, I mean.
I believe at that
Yeah.
time it qualified as a Eurotrash. I'm sorry, it's a coastal town, let's be frank.
Not in 85. That came a little later. Yeah. Again, here's the Metropolis, and this is the shot with Jimmy May, the replacements of Jimmy May that I was talking about. There's a Boppo Boys down in front there.
You see, the importance of the replacements, or of the Metropolis, is that this is the only place in Seattle that a band like the Replacements could play. They really couldn't play in any other club in Seattle, because most of the clubs in Seattle were still doing like bar bands and cover bands.
Right.
So you needed a place like the Metropolis. What was cool about the Metropolis is that they had local bands like the U-Men and Mr. Ep, but then they had the Replacements and Bad Brains and all these other bands that otherwise would have had no other place to play in Seattle. I mean, we mentioned the art galleries and things, and that was true, like Larry Reed's Graven Image, and they could do something, but they wouldn't necessarily last that long. But the Metropolis was around for a bit longer.
Yeah, it had a stability to it. You couldn't book a band like the Replacements and rent a hall because the hall rentals fell through. It was just a risky proposition, to guarantee a band and try and set it up in an alternative space. In the Metropolis, it wasn't too small and it wasn't too big. It was kind of just that. Right. I don't know
There's a strong effort to have that place closed down in a few months. I mean, they tried to. The complaints came from neighboring restaurants and stores that were concerned about people outside smoking and drinking. usually young guys and girls in leather and black and makeup. That was threatening to the other neighborhood retail outlets that felt that it was scaring away their business and their clients. And I believe you mentioned this, Chris, in your opening remarks. We were talking about the teen dance ordinance and the anti-postering ordinance. That was pushed by the the Attorney General at the time, Doug Jewett, right?
Jewett, yeah.
So Doug Jewett is trying to close down Metropolis to accommodate the fears and interests of the retail, community around it.
I mean, it was also.
I'm sorry,
Oh, I don't wanna stop.
Boppa Boys, that's what they didn't like. Can we explain the Boppa Boys to all the kids out
Go
here?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
That's why the local businesses didn't like this place.
No, they simply thought young people with weird hair and black leather smoking.
Yeah, I'm
Scaring away the shoppers.
guilty as, I mean, we would, because the Metropolis didn't serve alcohol, we would go to the alley, we'd go down to the
Yep.
corner store, buy some, 40s or whatever, and sit in the alley. It was freezing at times, I remember, that alley, but, I think once we turned 21, or some of us turned 21, there was the Irish bar in the corner, so,
Well, that was the other thing about the Metropolis, it was all ages. And I mean, now we have things like the Vera Club, or if a band comes to town, like when Slater Kinney did their comeback shows, they had an all ages show, that they had some 21 and over shows, but you didn't have that then. That did not happen then, so this was an unusual
The galleries
place.
were all ages.
Yeah, the galleries got rounded that way, yeah.
I'd like to mention that the gentleman in the foreground here is Jimmy May, who was inspired by the Metropolis and went on to start an all-ages venue in Tacoma called the Community World Theater. We heard that phrase tonight. That's where Nirvana played their first show, so this is how one thing begins.
I mean, it's amazing, you could take some of these early photos and really put them up on a wall and start drawing strings, It's, this was a legendary show, Big Black in 1985, their last 1987, their final show at the Georgetown Steam Plant. And quite influential. I believe Kurt was there, I think, yeah. The fist in the front there is Mark Arm, who features in a lot of my images. I'm tempted to call, I've been editing for another book, and I'm tempted to call it the Mark Arm story.
Didn't Roland Barker from Blackouts open for that show?
Jesse Bernstein.
Jesse Bernstein.
I was supposed to open for it, but Larry had this really stupid idea about having me set up my keyboard on top of one of the vats or something like that. And I originally said yes, and then I made up a lie and got out of it. And they got Jesse Bernstein, who wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah,
Right.
didn't they heckle him? Did they get a lot of
That's right.
flack?
Yeah. Well, that's how that goes.
Can you all describe the Georgetown
Because I
Steam
was
Plant
stuck.
for people? Because it was kind of a crazy space for a show.
It was a one-off.
That's
Yeah, that was a one-off. I mean, you can go down and still do tours, I think.
But it was a huge industrial space that you could wander around in. It's like punk rock Burning Man. Interact with the sculpture.
You said that was Coca? Yeah,
But Larry Reed, let's give props to Larry Reed.
Yeah,
He ran Graven Image, he ran Roscoe Louie, he ran Center of Contemporary Art.
Yeah.
He booked this show, and he threw the craziest parties in Seattle. The Seattle scene would have been dead without Larry motherfucking Reed.
He's the one who came up with the setting the moat on fire. That was his
Yes.
scheme.
He set the moat on fire, he managed the U-Men.
I remember at 16 in high school, in the suburbs in Bothell, I would go down to parties at Roscoe Louie, which was his gallery in Pioneer Square. And yeah, I turned on to bands like the Three Swimmers and Little Bears from Bangkok and all this cool art punk stuff, all pre-grunge, pre everything.
But
you
still,
know, Larry
still
had a-
post Gang of Four.
And you can see him at the Fanographic store pretty much any day of the week. So go get into a really long conversation.
The unofficial mayor of Georgetown.
So here's Green River at the Vogue. And actually this image I think was taken, one of the few I took with a little point and shoot type camera, so I was being lazy. But this to me really, like, the energy in this image I think is great, and this is the way the audience is interacting. It's very, I believe that's people, that's the fake Bruce Pavitt there in the front row. I actually knew that guy from college, and he looked very much like Bruce. But he has Dan Blossom down there in the corner from Feast. Yeah. And, this is Mark from Green River.
That was my favorite
That's
shot.
the coolest shot. I love that. Thanks.
Yeah, I just scanned this just a few weeks ago. You know, it's just
Is that a bug in his hair?
yeah, it looks like it. It's a little light glare
That's an
there.
end shot.
But yeah, you know, I mean, what this this brings up, and I did a oral interview this morning at KXP for a documentary that they're doing, and I was talking about how, you know, I didn't have any agenda. I wasn't like I had to go to these shows and come up with the perfect picture in the first 3 songs that the magazine's gonna run, kind of thing. And the bands didn't have any real agenda either. They were just pushing the envelope of rock and roll in these tiny clubs, getting paid nothing. So we were just kind of doing it. And so going back through my images, I've been coming up with some very, like, unique stuff that I was trying out at the time, and didn't necessarily print because, well, there was no use for it. So yeah. And another typical scene image from back then. This is the Fallouts in a basement. Oh,
You know, it looks like London in '65.
That was definitely a scooter scene and a mod scene.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are all these different scenes going on, you know, and they weren't necessarily grunge, but people interacted.
That was the band that came in and recorded a whole album with me in like a day. And all the songs were like a minute long. And they left and I was like, what was that? And Estrus ended up putting it out 2 years later. It was Here I Come and Other Hits was the name of it. They were amazing.
Great album. Is that Shannon and Dave then Dave on the very left?
Yeah,
Let's do that.
yeah.
Charles, do you care to speculate what that guy's drinking out of the cup there?
I would, that's Jeff Guess, actually, who's an artist, photographer artist who's lived in Paris for the last 20 years. And I still keep in touch with another genius there. I would suspect beer. Yeah, probably keg beer, I would think. Yeah, that was, yeah.
Red Hook, yeah.
And I would imagine soon after the hat went around for another keg of beer. That's typical. So here's
Tom Mick, that's Tom.
yeah, this is the Feast show. This is this was what was the name of this? It was a hair salon down there on 2nd Avenue that hosted a couple of shows, and really only a couple of shows after we were done with it. So, the Soul Asylum show was the last one. And that was,
Wait a minute. 2nd Avenue, so we opened up that show, Soul Asylum.
you did?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the venue. I think it was something crazy in the day, like you said.
Yeah.
Then in the evening, I think they served food and drinks or something.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I remember that we missed because we got there just as Soul Asylum was starting. We missed you guys.
Then you know what you
Sorry,
missed.
we were at the Room 9 house drinking beer. What can you say?
And what you missed was Chris taking a pair of headphones and turning around like this and started screaming into the headphones. A whole song. I didn't know that was an effect, but it was that night.
Yeah. Well, here he is at the Feast show. So
I have an anecdote here that's somewhat related. Jack, you might remember the famous Feast show at the Vogue. I think it was '87. And the reason the show was so infamous is because the band walked away with $700 and people talked about it for like a year.
It's true, it's true. That was like so much money. Yes, I remember hearing about it. They made $700 on a Tuesday. That was like,
fees
those guys are killing it. And then they broke up.
Yeah, they were like the incubator to a degree of the grunge scene, the real grunge, you know?
Shoulda, coulda, man.
Yeah.
They lived on the island, right?
Danny,
Alpha,
Tom
Bainbridge,
Bridge.
yeah, a couple of them were
Yeah.
Bainbridge.
Danny Peters played drums with them, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Pre-
early on he did, yes. Dan was the drummer.
There's a lot of turnover there.
There was.
I love
So-
this show.
Look at these little kids.
All right, there's Scott, but he might be in the audience. Hey, Scott.
So this is Soundgarden first photo shoot, first of many, I would imagine. So
Where is that?
this is on Melrose there, sort of overlooking I-5.
Down where Chris and Andy, they rented a house, and
Yeah.
we ruined it a couple hours a night, 3 nights a week.
There's no traffic.
That's the old Seattle.
Yeah, that's definitely old Seattle. So that was a fun day.
What year is this, Charles?
I want to say 85.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, Scott joined the band in '85. So. Yeah, I know. I'm over 30 years old.
When did Hero stop wearing that coat?
And this
Well, he
is
still has it.
this is from this is Soundgarden at the Ditto Tavern, and the Ditto was another incubator. Yeah, you remember these giant mural prints? Because I was going to the UW photography program, and so we concocted these wallpaper troughs and we're running these giant sheets of paper through this, and then I just went down and tacked them up on the wall of the Ditto. So there was pictures of Soundgarden and Green River and Route 9, etc. Yeah, it was another great fun memories at that place.
We were there because Skinyard and Vexed opened that show. That's when Melvin and I were standing.
That would make
That
sense.
was like the loudest, and I remember Mark Nalfasy, who's a whole other story, brought his huge PA into the Ditto Tavern for that show. All the way to the ceiling, it was ridiculous. He didn't charge, I think he was like, yeah, I'll set up the PA, he was a super fan.
I think he
I
does
do-
sound
I-
for the hydros now.
I wish I'd included it, but I do have one picture of Chris from there, and he's singing next to a plant. There was a
I've been called worse.
bar over there. But it just is so, it's just so not rock star.
Hey, Milton there, that was a guitarist in Hero's band
The Altar.
that became the Altered, which was like the house band at Metropolis. Hero kicked me out of that band and replaced me with Milton. I think I played too many notes or wore too many sweaters or something.
And from the other angle, and there's actually
There's
Ben
Danny.
from Skinyard and Grunt Rock. There.
Ben, Daniel, and Danny Peters. Yeah,
Dan Peters, Dan House.
Bass player for Skinyard right in front of Chris. These are all Mike's bandmates then?
Very young Ben McMillan. With that, yeah, there's that
Jacked.
giant PA. This doesn't show you how small that room actually was and how giant that PA was. 'Cause I think the Ditto only held like 100 people or something. It was
Oh yeah, if that,
nice.
So this was at the I-Beam in San Francisco, Mudhoney opening for Soundgarden. This is, to me, this is grunge here.
I've got an anecdote here. I was with Charles. We took the train down from Seattle to San Francisco to check out the Soundgarden Mudhoney Sub-Pop Showcase down there. And I want to share with you, I was standing close to the front of the stage, but there were a few people in front of me. and one guy turns to the next guy and says, "They're from Seattle." And it was just like, yeah, Seattle's happening kind of thing. It was just like, it was the first time I actually kind of witnessed that, getting outside of Seattle and somebody goes, yeah, this is the stuff.
Except we didn't take the train. That trip, we actually drove my Volkswagen van down there. The train trip was to the Raji show and the Nirvana Tad tour.
Oh, okay.
This was the year before.
But the I-beam show.
Yeah.
No, it
Yeah.
was just, but the buzz on Seattle was just really starting.
Yeah,
This is like, this was early 89, February 89.
Yeah, it was a fantastic show. You know, there were just some shows where it just kind of all came together as far as what I was shooting, and it just worked out. Here's another one of Mudhoney, and this was actually published in Bruce's Sub Pop book. Just a few images to grace the beginning and end.
Where's that at?
This is the infamous boxing show, boxing club show, July 8th, 1988, and I think it was the first time we had, Sub Pop had a showcase with the logo on the poster. So it was Blood Circus, Swallow, and Mudhoney, and I remember the fire department came down and threatened to close the show, and I had to negotiate with the fire chief there for a while. And he said, not one more person can come in. And so I stood by the door for an hour, just kind of holding it like that, along with some other people, because so many people wanted to get in.
Yeah, this is just Mudhoney blew up. It was crazy. And
Summer '88, so Mudhoney would have only been around for a couple months. Then.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
so good.
that's
From the air
actually
again.
this woman with her fist in the air. That's Erica, who worked for Sub Pop at the time. Yeah. Here's Nirvana at Coca, the Sub Pop showcase that Larry Reed put on over 2 evenings.
Yep. Two days. It was late August in '89.
I believe the bullshit was actually Bruce and Jonathan curated these Coca shows.
That's right. We curated the show. It was the Center of Contemporary Art, which at that time was located right next to the market.
Yeah, I love this picture, and definitely the ladies came out for Nirvana. You can see there. But there's a Green River shirt, Sub Pop 200 shirt.
Selling
Tracy
so much
Miranda.
merch.
Yeah, it's Tracy down in the left-hand corner there.
A photo from this show, it became the first Nirvana cover that they had all to themselves on the Rocket in December '89. Because previously they'd shared a photo on Sounds, a cover of Sounds when they toured England, because they just came back from England. They toured with Tad, so there was Tad and Nirvana. But from this show, they got the shots. Was a Cam Garrett? No, was it yours shot on the cover of the Rocket, or was it Cam's?
I don't think it was mine. I don't
Well, December
recall.
'89. That was the very first publication that had a full-page Nirvana cover.
Oh no, it was mine. Yeah, it was a color
Color
image.
shot.
Yeah,
It
that
was
I
mainly
took.
Chris in the
Mostly
foreground,
Chris. Yeah,
with the
yeah,
green
yeah.
shirt that you can see upstairs.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's all coming
back.
together.
The night before was Nirvana's second night, or second night. The night before was Mudhoney. No, they must have been the second night or first night, because the next night was Mudhoney, and Larry Reed had this idea of throwing powdered sugar everywhere on the audience. I got a great shot of Mark Arm. It looks like he's in a snowstorm, but there's so much condensation in there that I came back, and even the night before, you just take your camera and you just run it and run a blow dryer on it. Well, I did that after the Mudhoney show, and then the next morning the camera was just frozen up. And so I took it into the repair place, and the guy takes it to the back, and he comes back out, and he's like, "Did you spill a can of soda pop on this?" Which was ironic, because name of the shirt?
The poster, they did a poster, it's like
poster,
a
yeah.
parody of the Sub Pop logo, and it said
Said
Soda
Soda
Pop in the same fashion as the Sub Pop logo. And then, let's see, what was Mudhoney's
Well, the-
Super Fuzz Big Muff? So on the Soda Pop poster, it said Super Sugar Big Buzz. And then it had the dates of the shows, August 25th and 26th.
Yeah.
Super Sugar Big Buzz. So Larry was planning on the whole sugar thing for
Yeah.
months. That was what-
$175 repair. God damn it. It's a lot of money at the time.
Dude, that's what made it art.
Yeah.
Okay.
I suffered. So, I wouldn't consider this a particularly great image, but no, I mean, as far as like, you know, iconic images go. But what I love about this is that if you look closely, there's Kurt and Chad from Nirvana in the audience. So Kurt is right. See the guy with the beret right behind him on to the right. And then there's Chad right by on the other side of the mic stand. Which I had no idea they were even there at the I-Beam, and I have no idea why. It just when I scanned this, it just popped up in the.
What happened?
Yeah. Well, I got some great pictures, so photos live. Part of it was that Mudhoney just like
Were the other
really,
girl?
yeah, they opened for you guys, and they.
Remember the two guys in
But
front
the
of me who
next,
said
but the
Seattle?
next night is when you blew it up, and that's when I got the shot for Louder Than Love. Was the next night in Berkeley.
I think I remember that a lot of people got sick when they were down there.
Yeah,
in San
I had
Francisco.
pneumonia coming back.
Yeah, so
after
what
I got
happened
back.
was, almost every band that was down there in San Francisco for that, they turned around and went home.
Uh-huh.
We went on to LA. I got diagnosed there like bronchitis.
Yeah, I had pneumonia.
And then we went to
literally.
Texas, and we kept going. And everyone else went home, and it was fucked up. Man, I was like delirious. I was like waking up in the middle of the day having ridiculous hallucinations.
This is the natural.
Yeah, right.
That's when
The
everyone was
hate,
getting
right.
sick. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
It's worth noting Seattle buried the San Francisco music scene for about 5 years. You couldn't go into
Yeah.
a bar or go to a tattoo.
that's
So.
See you later.
So here we are at the Central Tavern, which became Grunge Central there for a while, and there's Tad holding it down right in the center there. Yeah. There. I think this was the Fluid. I'm pretty sure it was the Fluid. And of course, Mark Arm is in there somewhere. Oh, right, yeah, right there. I think that's Mark.
There was a fluid sound guard.
Oh God, they all just blur together. I don't know. Here's the Fluid at the Vogue. And I love this shot because it was kind of, you're working in pretty tight places, and it was rare to get, especially a band of this size, to get so many people in one shot. Yeah. And they were from Denver. So this is L7 at Squid Row, and the L7 were impressive, to say the least, and still are, yeah. So this was pretty typical of an L7 show, I have to say.
Charles, where were you standing?
stage left.
I think you're on top of the PA.
Were you on the speaker?
No, again, I was just holding my camera up. Yeah, just after a while, I mean, you just get, what you're doing. It just, just kind of becomes second nature. But that's what kind of, I think, gives the picture sometimes a pretty unique is the perspective. It's not. Yeah. This I just discovered a couple weeks ago. And this is L7 at the Vogue.
Yes.
And
That should be a gatefold.
yeah, this is what I was setting out to do with my live photography. Is like this image kind of, in rare color at that. So it sort of encapsulates that. I would capitalize on these lucky accidents, but what happened is that, like I explained earlier, my shutter was open for a period of time after my flash went off, which would freeze the subject. But then any lights that were there, so somebody else would, if they would take a picture, that's their flash going off, and they would create these double images, these ghost images. And I have a number of these from that show, so somebody was just like copying. Like when my flash went on, they were like, that must be the picture. It worked out.
Is that Ernie?
No, it looks like Everett. Looks like Everett.
Everett,
True.
there's Everett
It
True.
is. No, I thought Everett was heavier than, oh, he was.
So this is San Francisco, heading to the Kennel Club, and just a snapshot there. But there's Bruce on the right-hand side, and oh,
It is Everett with hair.
yeah, Everett with hair. Yeah.
So Everett True is the melody maker journalist who helped to kind of blow up the Seattle scene. He went back to England and started telling people about it.
Yeah.
And
So-
he put out the legend, don't forget that.
Yeah, it's
The legend.
you guys released a single, Donuts,
Right.
which was.
Well, how the hell do you
Everett
think he got to write about the scene? We put out his record. That's how it works, right? It was an a cappella version of some of a Ramones medley on the B side, and then a song about donuts, a cappella. You know,
He opened
but
for us.
it was totally worth doing that.
So
Because that's why this
museum
museum's
time
here.
wise. I have a great Everett True story, which was when Sub Pop flew him out, which was a big gamble. Money was tight, and they flew out this English journalist. And I was working in the offices at the time, and he showed up, and they were like, go take care of this guy for the next hour or two or whatever. So I walk him. He's like, oh, I need a coffee. So I walk him down to the Starbucks in the Pike Place Market there, and he buys like 2 coffees, like these candied nuts, these like chocolates, and all, like he's just like, and putting them in these pockets of that jacket there, and I'm like, 2 coffees. I'm like, who's the other coffee? Oh, it's just for me, and it's like, it's nuts. I thought this guy's nuts. We became fast friends. So this was at the Beehive Records, which was before that Peaches Records, and Nevermind.
That guitar's head, the bass head's upstairs.
And the speaker cabinet's upstairs. The high one.
After rehearsal, we all went down to Peaches to see this. That was our plan, was to shorten rehearsal. Let's go check out Nirvana and say hi to them. There are a bunch of unsavory types hanging around in the parking lot, so scared it off. We went home and called Doug Jewett. That's why Peaches is gone.
But I have another great shot from this I didn't include here of somebody crowd surfing inside the record store.
Wow.
But this was right before Nevermind was released, right?
This was
Week
the
before or
the
something?
week. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like at the record release.
16,
part.
I mean, it was available for sale. People were signing. Kurt was out front signing the
The
records.
in-store
Yeah, it was
appearance, they call it.
Is it an Echo now or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go take your selfie in front of the pic.
But the blue moon is still there.
So this was coming back from the London Lame Fest at the Hibernia, and it was Tad and Mudhoney, the Fluid, etc. But somehow on the flight back, ended up with the Tad Band and the Walkabouts, and the Walkabouts just happened to be flying back at the same time. I don't know how that worked out, but this was towards the tail end of Pan Am. It was a pretty trashy flight. We were like, we get on, it's like, oh, Pan Am flight 102, great. And literally, like above, and Tad is terrified of flying. And literally above Tad, the oxygen mask thing was taped off. And it was like, do you want to move seats? Because it was pretty empty. Like, do you want to move? He's like, nah, if it goes down, we're all gonna die anyway. I'm just gonna get drunk. So, Kurt Danielson, he and I were sitting, down the aisle from Tad here. Kurt bought a liter of Stoli at the duty-free shop, and you're not supposed to open that bag. Well, we polished off that liter. We literally got cut off from orange juice. The stewards wouldn't bring us any more orange juice. You could smoke. Yeah, you could. I think you could. Yeah. Yeah. I love the foot coming out of Tad's back there. So yeah, this is kind of I have a picture of me like totally passed out on the tray, like, oh my God, yeah. So.
That's a great shirt, Kim.
I don't think I talked to Charles for the rest of that day.
I think for a while, yeah. This was my idea. And 3/4 of the band were really into it. There's another picture I have of kind of a wide shot of them getting ready, and Susan's painting the flowers on Chris's chest, around his nipples, and Kim is over there drinking a beer. It looks like he's just like pacing back and forth, talking to Hero. Everyone else has their shirts in their shorts, and he's still like
I didn't even
fully
want to take my
dressed.
boots off.
Yeah, and just like coming up with every reason not to do this photo shoot.
It's stagnant shit water. Mosquito larvae, leeches, isocapsules things when I was a kid. I'm not getting in there.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I was totally nervous because I rented this special lens. Like at the time, it was like this several $1,000 lens, wide-angle lens that I rented. And I'm like,
When did you
Jesus,
get
if
it?
I, well, because if I slipped and ruined my, I think I got a little way in. I don't,
Look how pale
But-
Matt is. I mean, his skin is.
And you're a total trooper.
Was that for the flower EP or?
Was it? Well, we used the image from that day on the flower.
Just to cover the rocket.
Yeah, but this was cover the rocket or something.
I think I vetoed that for any other.
Did you get leeches? Were there any leeches?
There's crap, you can feel it. Like
Like in the Star Wars Episode 4.
the other guy's good too. I mean, they're like, oh man, what the hell? I just felt.
Oh well, yeah, no, I mean, but you had to suffer
shit
for
there.
your art a little bit.
Stunt photos, I hate making videos for the same reason. It's just stunt crap. It's like, you're suffering for your art. Photos are okay.
Well, I
$10
could
a body.
have, later on, I got Mudhoney to like smear mud all over him and run around a parking lot.
They're actors.
Yeah. And this is actually the last image there in the slideshow, and this is from that day. And I just thought I would leave us here with a beautiful picture. You can see the King Dome in the background there. This
Hey,
was-
the nipple flowers start fading.
Yeah, this was a loft that I want to say 111 Alaskan Way that I was living in with Bruce Fairweather and a number of other people, Ed Fotheringham, a cast of people kind of came in and out. And so we just, bought this blank warehouse space, and I ended up actually building a room within the room for my dark room, and then sleeping on top of that. And then we built all these lofts in the back. So we had roof access, so we went up,
The reissue of Ultra Mega OK, which came out a year ago in April, Matt really pushed for this to be the gatefold image. So the outer cover is like what, black and blue, and the inside is this full color Charles thing. And Matt was pushing for that, but I think a couple of guys at Sub Pop and myself vetoed this for whatever reason. We found another picture that's, I think, is a little bit cooler.
yeah, I think so,
Oh, you like the other one too.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But the selling point for this one was the King Dome, that
Uh-huh.
people wanted to show old Seattle before those condos went up.
Plus, I love the fact that none of you are looking into the camera. You kind of doing your own, there's something was going on there, conversation-wise, or I don't know, but it's very casual. I like that.
We rarely ever all four looked into the camera.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the, this brings up an interesting point, which is one of the difficulties that art directors have always had with me is I have a very high hit rate. So I would typically from a shoot or a live show or whatever bring back a lot of good images. So it would be difficult to decide on which to use. A good problem